Hey everybody, welcome back to the Whiteboard Finance Show. I got something that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, not from a recreational or personal standpoint, because I do like to play poker. However, you may not expect a poker guest on this podcast. However, I think it's going to be very insightful and very valuable. My guest today is Ethan Yao, aka Rampage Poker on YouTube. Right now, he has about 51,000 subscribers, and he's getting a whopping 1.5 million views a month. Welcome to the show, Ethan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So my listeners are probably like, what the hell? Why does he have a poker player on his podcast? What does this have to do with investing or entrepreneurship or, macroeconomics? But I think there's a lot to be learned about being a poker player in regards to, bankroll management, taking on risk, because as investors, that's pretty much all we do. We take on a certain amount of risk for a certain amount of reward. And I think it would be great to have a guest such as you on the podcast. So very quickly, you want to just introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah. So, my name's Ethan. I run a poker YouTube channel. And the weird thing about me is that I'm pretty new into poker. I started making videos about 2 years ago, which is the exact same time where I started playing poker. So for me, content and poker always came together. And through that, I kind of learned the game of poker through the YouTube comments and just starting with learning the basic rules, then getting into different forms of strategy and how to play the game correctly and profitably. So I got a lot of insight, honestly, from random people and strangers that I didn't know through the internet. And it's a very unique and different way of learning how to play a game or just learning any sort of topic in general. But it's worked out so far. We're 2 years in and things have been going fairly well. And the YouTube channel recently has just hit 50K subscribers, which is nothing near 500,000. But we are slowly grinding away and things have been going well so far.
Yeah, you're doing great, man. I think your fan base is super loyal because you come off as incredibly genuine. And I'm subscribed to your channel. I've been watching you for a long time. I watch a lot of your videos in the car. I'll listen to them, while I'm driving, just because I think it's important to learn someone's journey from the beginning, whether as a content creator or taking on a new endeavor. But let's not undersell you too short, man. You just recently won a World Series of Poker bracelet. That is an incredible accomplishment, man. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, that was wild weekend. As someone who's very new into the game, it's kind of the dream of being able to place top 5 or just deep into a poker tournament, and something like that is a crazy thing to have on my poker resume, as you could call it, as someone who's like very new into the game. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, honestly, now that thinking about it, looking back on it.
That's awesome. What were the winnings and how many people did you beat out?
I think it was a $500 tournament buy-in, and there was about like 1,500 people, and the top place was 160,000, which is nice.
Nice.
And the weird thing, won it in 2020, obviously. So there were no live poker tournaments, so everything was online. So you could only play in New Jersey or Nevada. So I had to take a quick weekend trip to New Jersey, got an Airbnb, and just live streamed it too, which was really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a huge win. There's many professional poker players that have been playing for decades that can't say that they have a bracelet. So that's a huge check mark for your resume. So let's talk a little bit about bankroll management, because the podcast is about, finance and personal finance and things like that. As poker players, you always hear this term bankroll management. It's kind of like budgeting for almost like your personal household income, if you will, or your personal household balance sheet. Can you take us a little bit through that, as what your perspective is on that? And do you even practice bankroll management, or you kind of just YOLOing it every weekend?
Yeah, bankroll management, definitely a thing. So to add some perspective, I'm 23. I just graduated school from university 2019. So I started playing pretty much about my senior year in college when I turned 21. I got lucky, or I guess I can call it lucky. A new casino just opened up 30 minutes outside my university, and super easy to just go. And I was learning the game at the time, so it kind of worked out. So back then I started with no real idea of bankroll management. I had like $3,000 in my bank account. I would put $500 on the table, and that ratio of how much money I was playing with is definitely on the irresponsible side. So I definitely don't recommend doing that. But now looking back, like 2 years later, I think like probably the only if there was ever an important thing in poker, is bankroll management, because obviously with poker, it's a mix of skill and luck. And I think the luck factor plays very heavily, especially if you were to play with like a high percentage of your bankroll, essentially. So like in my situation, I had 6 max buy-ins to my name of my entire like net worth, essentially. So if things went poorly for one night, I could easily lose like $2,000 or something like that, and kind of be devastated and be broke, essentially. So I guess like specifically, like I think one thing that if anyone wants to play poker, I want to take it seriously. I get this question all the time: is what should my poker bankroll be? How much should I set aside? And a nice, easy answer, I would call it, would be if you were able to play, if you were able to put 20 max buy-ins and budget that just strictly for poker, and then have other money left over to live and like pay for rent, pay for food, and all that fun stuff, then I think that's an appropriate a budgeted amount, because then that's able to kind of offset some variance along the way, because you will run into stretches where you're going to lose when you do everything right. You're going to lose when, I mean, poker is all about percentages. And sometimes you're going to lose when you're an 80% favorite to win or a 90% favorite to win. And that's just unfortunate. But you have to kind of withstand those losses if you have the right budget in play.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the word variance. So variance is just another word for luck or fate or luck of the draw kind of a thing. How do you feel about poker making you a better investor? Do you feel like, because I know you started another YouTube channel where you're kind of picking stocks and investing and doing stuff like that. Is that a product of your winnings from the World Series of Poker, or is this something you've always been interested in investing? And do you feel like poker's made you a better investor?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to go into with that. With the second channel, it's more so talking about the recent videos. I have talked about a few stocks I've put money in, but I think growing up throughout college and going through school and learning about, I went to school for business, and on YouTube, I was very invested in like watching all the finance channels, so yours and everyone else's that talked about kind of like the correct financial mindset. And I think what everyone preaches is to try to get into the market early and just invest as early as possible, and just kind of let the market do its job from there. So that was always kind of the one thing I had a big emphasis on, was just trying to get enough money to at least get my foot in the door with getting started, essentially at a pretty young age, because I'm 23 right now. And yeah, that was kind of where it grew out of.
Nice. So I think that you touched on a very important point for the younger listeners. The demographics of this podcast are probably similar to, a little bit younger than you, to maybe, mid 40s, late 40s kind of a thing. So it's interesting because you have all different types of perspectives. When you're young, you have the ability to, work with compound interest and have time on your side, and you're able to be a little bit more risky. What is your portfolio looking like today, if you don't mind me asking?
It's mixed up of a lot of different things. So when I first started, I had no idea, like I was a senior in college. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I was doing the very stereotypical thing of just like kind of picking stocks. And day one, I made a fatal error. I put money into the Tesla. I bought like 6 shares at $200 a share at the time. This was like the summer of 2019. I made a quick profit of like maybe 30% after 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm pretty happy with this. We're just gonna cash out and sell those shares. And that was obviously very unfortunate. Hindsight looking back, I don't know how much that's worth now, but it's a high number, whatever those 6 shares were back then. But then like I watched a lot more YouTube videos, kind of understood the correct mindset to have moving forward. So early on, when I graduated school, had a full-time job playing a little bit of poker, making money on the side, I put a lot of my assets into just the S&P 500, and then slowly started to diversify into random like tech stocks, the bigger companies, really. Nothing super risky, but there's companies that I thought that would make sense, like Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Google, a little bit of Tesla, all the big names. So nothing super risky on the investment side.
Nice.
But
Well, at least you didn't
Um,
lose money. That's the thing. I know you said it was like a fatal mistake, but a rule one of investing is don't lose money. So that's not bad. However, what I learned, just I've been investing since I was 18. My progression was similar to yours. I would buy individual stocks of stuff that I knew. So it's like, oh, I wear Nike soccer cleats. I'm going to buy Nike stock. You know, I eat breakfast at McDonald's. I'm going to buy McDonald's, that kind of a thing. And I did progress into more of like ETFs and index funds, similar to what you're describing with S&P 500 and total stock market and things like that. But I think that what I've learned is when you do pick individual stocks is you have to let your winners run, because when you let them run, you just kind of,
yeah.
it's just unbelievable the percentages that you can make, especially in today's market. Today's market's kind of insane, but I was investing since basically 2006, and in 2008, I got my butt handed to me. But ever since then, you know, you just let the winners run. You kind of dollar cost average. You invest a little bit of money every week or every month or every quarter, whatever your time frame is, and you kind of let the market do its thing, as you mentioned. So now that you're kind of getting in the game of investing, you have a nice little nest egg, especially for your age, given the World Series of Poker bracelet and the win. What are you going to be doing with the rest of that money? Do you feel like you're going to be investing it? Are you investing into the channel? Like, what is your thoughts on just having that nice little nest egg at your age, and some insight for the audience?
Yeah. I guess, with what I have so far, there's a lot of different routes I can go with. I think one of the main things in terms of investing is I've just been super aggressive with trying to put as much as I can in the market and just into some retirement accounts or just individual accounts as well. Like I said, just to have that money there, sit there. Like, I'm 23. I'm lucky enough where I'm still living at home in my childhood bedroom, and I'm not paying that much. I'm not paying really much rent right now, so I'm able to just be as kind of risky as possible, but not as risky in terms of the stock picking, but more so just not really holding on to much cash. So a high percentage is just in my stock portfolio. And then the rest is kind of put back into YouTube and trying to make different forms of content, experimenting with a number of different options, because I think the one thing about YouTube is that there's a life cycle to everything and you're on a bell curve.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, like, it's just, you just know that you can't be relevant forever. And sometimes, or eventually, one of these days it'll die out, and it could be super soon, or it could be like in 5 years if you can do things right. So just trying to, when I quit my full-time job and went to YouTube full-time, I knew that I needed another, like, kind of safety net or another source of income, because one of these days, like, people won't want to watch poker videos on YouTube. One of these days, other people are going to take over the poker space on YouTube, and I'm not going to be, and people just won't watch me. Number of different factors that can happen. So I'm trying to experiment with different kinds of content creation. And I've very recently just tried experimenting with drop shipping. So we'll see how that goes. And a bunch of random different things, but definitely focusing more on my poker YouTube channel, because that's obviously what's going really well right now, and just trying to double down and pump up videos as fast as I can and everything like that.
Yeah, completely understood. That makes sense. I completely agree with you with the bell curve statement. I feel like every channel has a life cycle or a lifespan, whether it's, you know, the algorithm not recommending the videos anymore, or whether it's the audience kind of getting fatigued from the creator or the content type, or maybe even growing out of it at some point. I think that's a very good point. So if you don't mind, let's dive into the numbers a little bit of your channel. As I mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned as well, it's about 51,000 subscribers, crushing it with over 1 million views a month. I think it's 1.5 million. What kind of income does that come with? Are you doing this full time, or do you still have your W-2 job?
Yeah, I quit my job early January 2020.
Nice.
So that was at a stage where I was making $1,000 a month off of YouTube, and just, it was super early, and I was like, I just really didn't like, I don't know, I just really wanted to work for myself and just take that leap of faith. And like I said, I'm young enough where if I were to fail, I can, I guess, have some sort of a safety net to fall back on. And I lived at home, which was just nice to not have too many expenses. But right now, with the 1.5 million views in January, the CPM obviously dropped a little bit, but I think YouTube told me right now, last 28 days, my ad revenue is like $9,000,
Nice.
which is pretty good. December was really good. Obviously, I think it peaked. I think it's like somewhere around 11 or 12,000, which is really nice. No
Absolutely.
complaints, especially for a fairly small channel like mine. Every single video gets more than my subscriber count in terms of views. So things are going really well. YouTube keeps recommending the videos, and I'm going to just keep pumping out the content as long as it's good. I recently hired an editor, which is a good buddy of mine. So he's able to be a lot more efficient, produces higher quality content than I could ever do.
Hmm.
And editing is probably the one thing that I hated doing the most. So it's nice to kind of have that off my back, I guess.
Yeah, with your content type, I could see it being a pain in the butt. Like with me, I'm literally just in front of a whiteboard. It's one scene. I press record. It's easy. With yours, you have multiple hands. You have multiple situations. You always have to record. Let's talk about recording at the table, man. I'll dive back into the numbers and talking about like aspiring YouTubers and all that. But just for my own selfishness here, what is recording at the tables like? I thought that was not allowed.
Yeah, it's really not at like a high majority of the places, you know. Last year I ran it, or not last, 2 years ago, I think. I keep saying last year was 2019, but 2020 almost didn't happen. But 2 years ago, I got banned from a casino, a local one near me, where I originally started playing, just because I recorded at the table. I'm pretty sure they saw the video on YouTube, and I've run into a few problems. Like I live in Massachusetts, so the Massachusetts Gaming Commission is super strict on phones at the table. You're not even supposed to use them, and nevertheless record and edit and post a video on YouTube.
Hmm.
So ran into a few issues there, but I was recently very lucky enough to run into a place in New Hampshire, there's the state above, and they don't have any rules about recording. So they saw the videos I was posting. They thought, hey, it's free advertisement, free marketing. It's kind of like a win-win for both parties. So I'm able to go up there now and kind of have free reign with recording.
Hmm.
But it's definitely an issue anytime I travel to a new place or something where I don't have the permission to record. I'm just trying to fly under the radar, hope that no one asks any questions about the phone at the table. Like the one thing about the phone is that at least it looks a little discreet in how I have it propped up. It might look like I'm just streaming a YouTube video or a movie or something, because sometimes people do that at the tables. But yeah, it's always just kind of a little nerve-wracking to try to fly under the radar, hope no one asks any questions, and go from there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So for any aspiring people that are your age, early 20s, say that you get your first big boy, big girl job, and now you're making, 50, 60, 70 grand a year, you're fresh out of college, or just anyone that just doesn't want to go that W-2, live in the cubicle kind of route. What would be your advice to those people now that, technology, I've say this almost every episode, I think my audience is getting sick of it, but in my opinion, technology is like the great equalizer, meaning that as long as you have an internet connection and either a cell phone or a computer, you can start a blog, a YouTube channel, podcast, anything. What would you recommend the route knowing what you know now?
If you really want to make content and it's something that you're really passionate about, do it. I think it should always start with, like, I feel like every time I hear anyone who makes content say this, but it's like you kind of want to start with a passion first instead of going in for trying to make like a side income.
Hmm.
If you go, like, you just get burned out really quickly because of how long it takes to get traction, get some sort of attention on you. It's a long road to even get monetized, I think, sometimes, based on like the kind of niche and content you're making. But like you said, technology is the great equalizer. Everyone has a phone. And people ask me specifically, like, how do you record the tables? And it's like, you just have a phone, and that's all you need. Like this, I have the iPhone 11. This camera is better than the other camera I paid $700 for.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane. Where if you want to, like, TikTok, I think is also another really great opportunity. It's just a really great and easier way to get more attention, especially on that platform because it's so new. But I always just say start. You never know what can happen. You have a lot of free time on your hands outside of the 40-hour-a-week job that you work. And if you're able to make the most of it, go for it.
Absolutely. When have you been the most scared at the poker table? Was it when you were new, when you're going up against a big celebrity? Like, do you have that fear at the table?
I remember for the first, like, maybe year and a half, I just kept I would feel like very anxious and nervous when I'm walking through the garage, going through the doors, and just before sitting at a table. Like, I just had this like pit in my stomach where I just like super jittery, super excited, super anxious. And that didn't last. That lasted for like over a year and a half. It started because I was playing with a lot of money that I really couldn't afford to lose. and I didn't know how to play poker really. So that's how it started. But even gradually, when I kind of figured out that I kind of had a clue with what I was doing, and the long term, I knew that I would make money, but I still had that like kind of excitement and angst for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always like the rush, the adrenaline rush before walking to the tables that you're always trying to battle. And I faced that for a while.
So would you recommend using money you can't afford to lose to gamble at poker? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Financially sound advice. Yeah. We need a breakdown of that on the whiteboard here.
I'm just kidding, dude. I'm just messing with you. No, obviously there's a luck factor to poker, but the reason I like it is because it's kind of like all the biggest entrepreneurs that I knew, all the biggest portfolio managers that I knew, all the biggest finance guys that I knew, they all loved poker. And, you know, before I got into it, I never really understood it. I played like when it first blew up when I was in high school. If you remember, like, you know, the Mike Matisows and, you know, the Chris Moneymakers of the world when it really got popular and it was on ESPN. But that was just like a quick thing. It was a fad. But when I started working in finance, I noticed all these guys, man, they loved poker and I couldn't understand why. But to me, it's really just analyzing, you know, different people's play styles and then also just the probabilities, you know. So take us through that a little bit without getting too technical, because obviously this isn't a poker podcast. But how do you analyze when to kind of go quote unquote all in or when to bluff, or, you know, when are you realizing those opportunities with the probabilities?
I think you said it best, where it's really fun when you're playing at a table. Let's say you have 8 other guys around you. You're sitting there and everyone's kind of analyzing each other and how everyone plays. And then you just kind of watch how they play, see their tendencies, and try to figure out ways to exploit the tendencies given specific spots. So if you know someone is playing way too many hands, then you usually would just do the opposite, play a smaller amount of hands and just like a better portion of the hands that you can play that are stronger. And then you're able to kind of exploit that by putting more money in the middle. And if they're very likely to put money in, then, you know, you're kind of sitting in a really great spot there. And obviously, like I think the most fun thing you can do is bluff someone out of a hand. So trying to be creative and experiment with different ways of how you can bluff them, how you can get them to fold, whether it be by raising, putting a lot of money in, whether it be just doing sometimes small bluffs work. Like if you just put like a small amount of money in there and then they just fold, it's always a good feeling when you get some bluffs through. But that's kind of the fun about it, is trying to just kind of exploit other people's tendencies. And that's kind of like the game within the game. In terms of percentages and when you should go all in and stuff, like how people calculate like odds in poker is essentially, you know, there are 52 cards and there are X amount of combinations of hands that are there. And you know the cards that you need to hit, essentially. If you're on a draw, like a flush draw, which would be 5 of the same suit, you know that there are only 13 of the same suit that you're looking for. And from there, you can easily calculate the percentage of how likely you'll hit your hand in the long term.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically putting yourself in situations where you have a high probability of winning the pot based on the strength of your hand, essentially.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So how do your parents feel about you, being full-time on YouTube? Because I know I had that conversation with my dad. I took him to a bar and we ordered a couple beers, and I was like, you know what? You know, I got this steady job at a publicly traded bank. I was working at Key Bank in Cleveland at the time, and, you know, making decent money. It was good money for Cleveland, Ohio. And it's kind of like, you know, why would I give up this 401k, you know, this really nice benefits? I lived, you know, 10 minutes from the campus that I was working at. And I told him, like, hey, you know, it's like I'm putting in my 2 weeks, you know, like probably tomorrow, you know, how do you feel about that? And he was very supportive. It actually surprised me. But, you know, I don't know if your parents are immigrants. My parents are immigrants, and they're like, you know, W-2, 8 to 5, work hard, you know, retire at 60, whatever, you know, the old school mentality as opposed to the entrepreneurial mentality. How do they feel about that?
Yeah, it's kind of the same situation, very traditional, where what my parents were, and especially when it came to something that was revolved around gambling, because poker is a form of gambling, and just kind of throwing that in the same category as all the table games, sports betting, and blackjack, and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I first told them that I didn't tell them that I think I told them kind of early on ish, where I was like a year into playing poker. I had a decent track record of, hey, like this is kind of what I'm doing at school right now. And I also used the funny thing, I used YouTube to justify it because it felt like I was being productive. But hey, I'm also making videos and I'm making like a couple $100 here and there from these videos. So I'm not like totally just like gambling and blowing my money away, you know? And that was the conversation that was first had. And that was I remember telling my mom, actually, my mom found out last compared to my dad, because we were on a trip to China, and then I wanted to go on a day trip to Macau because that's kind of like the Asian Vegas,
Vegas, yeah.
over
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And I was like, I really want to take this day trip here. She didn't know why, and I was like, oh, it's actually because I want to play poker, and I also make these videos, and now you all know about this. And yeah, that was the first introduction, was during that trip. And it eventually got to the point where I felt like it was kind of sustainable enough to be a full-time thing. And with the poker income and YouTube income, I thought potentially it could be a thing. It had a good opportunity. And once I told them, they were pretty supportive about it. It was kind of like, it was just, I had to kind of live my life. And if I fail, I fail. Although I was lucky enough for them to kind of support me if I did fall. But so far, a year in, and things are going smoothly.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like when you take that leap as an entrepreneur and kind of burn the ships, so you can't get back on the boat, you kind of go all in. And, if you fail, no big deal, man. I mean, you learn so many life skills just by trying to start a business or, a creative endeavor. I think that it's always worth it because it helps you grow as a person.
Yeah, for sure. And it really helped me and kind of my comfortability about it was because I've tried to run a few YouTube channels in the past while in school. The most successful one I ever had was a gaming channel, but like mobile gaming. It hit like 16,000 subscribers, and I understood like the life cycle because that channel became dead really quickly. And I just wasn't able. I didn't learn the lesson of like pivoting and trying to stay relevant, but also just kind of set myself in the right position for when the game that I was playing would eventually die down, I'd have something else to fall back on. So that was a good lesson to learn early on.
Perfect. How is being a YouTuber or someone, in the spotlight, I guess? I hate to use the word spotlight, but just putting yourself out there for other people to, be able to criticize or critique or give you feedback. How has that helped your network? Have you met, a lot of cool people? I've seen you on some cool vlogs with like Brad Owen in them. Just how has it changed your life, for the better?
Really cool. So like I said, I started making YouTube videos when I started playing poker because I wanted to learn. So right off the bat, I got a lot of valuable feedback on learning the game and learning the basics, learning what's the correct way to play in certain situations. So right off the bat, that was a really huge benefit. And then as the channel grew, throughout the whole time, obviously, I was watching all of the bigger poker YouTubers because that's one way of learning the game as well, watching other people play. So I was watching them for like 2+ years and ended up getting their attention. And we were just ended up meeting up with them in Vegas and just seeing the people that I kind of looked up to and aspired for like the past 2 years learning the game. It was really cool to kind of see like, oh, I'm just like some random dude that started playing poker because of you guys, because like I saw their videos and it was kind of an inspirational thing to see that there is a market for poker on YouTube. And they kind of helped me kind of take that leap of faith watching their videos. And it kind of comes full circle when I ran into them when I was in Vegas. So it was just really cool to kind of have that around,
I had
like
that.
The cool thing about poker vloggers is like everyone's there to kind of support each other, because that's just kind of the benefit of everything. Although poker is a game where everyone's trying to take each other's money.
Yep.
The thing with content is we can all actually help each other out as opposed to battling it out on the tables.
Absolutely. That's very well said. My first experience with that was at FinCon. FinCon is a conference for like financial bloggers, YouTubers, podcasters. And, you see all these people on YouTube that you've been watching for years, and you meet them all in person and you realize, oh, these are just regular people too. And, that's why I like the finance space too, is because I feel like everyone has each other's back almost, and we all support each other for the most part. And that's why I kind of like that, the poker community as well, because I follow a couple other poker vloggers and it's fun. It's just something to kill time, watch how they play. And I feel like all you guys seem to be kind of quote unquote cool with each other, which is nice to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
There's a nice little, I didn't know how tight like the community was, especially around the poker community, where kind of everyone kind of knows each other. They all help each other out and everything. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely. So what is in the future for you? So say we're, a couple years down the road here, we're having this conversation, a couple Januaries from now. Let's just say, God forbid your YouTube channel is on the other side of the bell curve that we were talking about. What are your plans in general for your brand, for YouTube, or maybe even business in general?
Yeah, I mean, good question. Right now I'm just trying to prepare for that because I know that's very inevitable. So it's a mix of like, I learned this thing from Gary Vee. He keeps talking about offense and defense, and how once you are a business owner, which technically we all are running our own channels, you kind of have to, one, be very aggressive and be on the offense of trying to grow and explore new ventures and new ideas. And on the same side, play on the defensive of maintaining what you've built so far and letting that continue and prosper. So right now I'm kind of in the middle of doing both, where I want to experiment with different forms of content because I love making videos. I think it's really fun. That's why I started that second channel where I just talk about random financial topics. But in the same token, trying to build this Rampage Poker brand that I really didn't had no intentions of building until I guess very recently. So just trying to experiment with different forms of content there as well with TikTok. And I just think that's a really good opportunity. And continuing to pump out videos that are fairly high quality. That's why I got my buddy to edit my videos for me, and just maintaining this level. And then in the same token, just trying to find other different side hustles that I like. So drop shipping just piqued my interest. Wanted to just kind of take a dip and see what that felt like. And other random things that might help generate some income once YouTube inevitably falls.
I love that. I love the offense and defense analogy because I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing, not only with this podcast, but just with other products. Like I'm going to start a school called WhiteBoard Finance University, where it's kind of like digital courses, with a community aspect to it. I feel like I want to protect the main channel, WhiteBoard Finance, because that's kind of like the bread and butter right now. But also, like with this podcast, this is going into something that I've never done podcasts before. I have no idea, so I like to be a little bit prepared before I talk to my guests. I'm glad to have the network and kind of like the notoriety of like, hey, it's Marco from WhiteBoard Finance. Let's go on the podcast, as opposed to starting from zero. But I do love that offense defense analogy. So offense, I guess, is the podcast for me, and maybe going into like different digital products. And the defense is kind of just doing what I've been doing on the main channel.
Yeah, for sure. When are you dropping the school and everything? I saw a few posts about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Super exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to be too spammy about it or salesy, but basically, there's a huge need for financial literacy, and I feel like that school is kind of going to hopefully fulfill that need for 90% of people. So to answer your question, right now I have about 4 courses outlined. I'm just waiting on graphic design and like worksheets and spreadsheets and things like that for the school. So when that's all finished, I'm going to then record, and then that should be hopefully maybe end of March. So I'm not trying to pitch it too hard before then, but I'm a one-man show, dude. I have a lot of stuff to do before then. So that actually leads me to a good question. Have you considered, any products of your own other than the merchandise? I know you have a little bit of merch.
Yeah, merch has been a really cool experiment, actually, which is why that kind of piqued my interest with drop shipping, because when I was selling my merch, I had a blast fulfilling orders. It was just super rewarding. It felt like to kind of make a product and have people see enough value in it to buy it. And one of the card protectors I sold out in like a week.
Wow.
And I was staying up till 4 a.m. just fulfilling orders. And I loved every second of it. I have no idea why. But yeah, like similarly, I thought about doing like a course or something like that in terms of poker, and having it a little bit more oriented towards like beginners, because I'm a beginner myself. The issue is, like I said, I'm still a beginner, and there's a lot that I don't know about poker. Just very aware that there's so much for me to know. I really don't know a whole lot. So I don't think I'm really qualified to really teach a whole lot just yet. But over time, it's definitely something that I'm looking into, because I think it's just a really good opportunity, and adding a different perspective of the game is also very helpful.
Yeah, I respect that a lot. The fact that you said like, "Hey, I'm a beginner. I don't know if I'm qualified yet." Like that is a huge credibility boost, in my opinion, in my eyes, about you, because I feel like at least in the finance space, don't get me wrong, you don't need to have a finance degree or be some like rocket scientist or anything to be able to teach or learn finance. The thing is that there's so many people like trying to like be perceived as something that they're not, and that's the big that's the big yellow flag for me. It's like these like snake oil salesmen and these gurus, it's like, buy my course and you'll be driving a Ferrari and have supermodels in no time. It's like, come on, dude. So that's the thing that gets me, especially in the finance space. But I really respect that about you. At what point do you think you would be, quote unquote qualified? I mean, you have a freaking WSOP bracelet, dude. Come on.
If I have a bracelet, anyone can win a bracelet. That just shows how luck can play a huge factor in poker. I don't know when I think I'll be qualified. I did think about, like, there's a few very key people that has helped me, not, I guess for lack of a better term, like kind of groomed me in learning the game of poker and kind of honed my ability a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I were to implement them and their insights on the game and have their value added into this course that I'm kind of just drumming up in my head right now,
mm-hmm.
That would be a good opportunity and way to kind of actually have more credible and experienced people add value as opposed to just me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm really ready, at least not right now. There's a lot of work that I need to do on my own game.
Well, that's very respectable, because when you do put something out, the audience is going to know that, hey, this is for real. So I really respect that. So other than being a beginner at poker, it seems to me that you're like a natural creative. What did you actually go to school for? And I ask this question a lot. How do you feel about higher education now that you kind of said, screw the W-2, I want to be a YouTuber full time? Like, what are your thoughts about higher education in general?
Yeah, even while I was in school, I went to school for business management, and even while I was in college, I think my freshman year, I realized, like, this is crazy that I'm literally learning more from YouTube than my courses in school. And as much as the professors were great and everything, it just felt like you really can't learn much from a textbook. You got to learn it from experience, especially in business. That was like the biggest thing, because I've always had this mindset. Like, I've had friends who were engineers and who wanted to code and actually need schooling for that. Like, those professions, 100%, like,
Mm-hmm.
you got to go to school. But I think in terms of business, at least for what I went to school for, there really isn't anything too applicable that I learned from a textbook versus just working some sort of internship, whether it be with a startup or some like bigger company in an office, and just kind of experiencing what you like and don't like. And yeah, I think there's a lot you could use. I think the money used for education itself is more so for the college experience and building a network and all of that, which is great. But for the actual learning and textbook and homework, there's a lot more. There's more resources out there.
Yeah,
that are a lot more valuable than college.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it's funny because my bachelor's is in finance, my minor is in entrepreneurship, and like taking entrepreneurship at any classroom level is almost like laughable. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, you can get good case studies and you can see how some people, tweaked this kind of thing and increased their ROI, a certain percentage. That's great. But, until you're actually out in the streets doing things yourself, there's no way that you can kind of either, unless you're like replicating someone's business model, that's different. But I'm saying, like, to actually like start something from scratch on your own, in my opinion, that's always going to be the better teacher and the ultimate school of, hard knocks kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think learning from experience and from failure, because you're going to fail when you first start. I think that's like the most valuable lesson from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, because failure, it's still, even if you say, for example, I gave this example a couple of times too. I started Amazon FBA, like private labeling. I had this acrylic bird feeder with suction cups on the back, and it basically, you stick it to a window, right? It sounds corny as hell, but it's actually really cool. And you put bird feed on the bottom. So as you're like sitting at your kitchen table, you can see the birds come and eat and stuff. It's pretty cool. It sounds really nerdy, but I was proud of that. But I was talking to these suppliers in China, and you had to get around a language barrier. You had to get around like customs and shipping. And then also that cost me I think like $1,000 or $1,500 just for the samples and the graphic design and all that stuff. And when you realize like, oh, the main guy on Amazon can just lower his margins and there goes my profit margin, like I'm out of business. So I didn't pursue it.
Yeah.
But it was a great learning experience because, I'm learning how to talk to suppliers in China. I'm learning how to reach out to graphic designers and get my stuff edited. And you created this product, and like every time I see that, I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as something that just didn't work out, no big deal. But those life skills that you learn along the way are invaluable.
Yeah. And I think if you're early on, you got to have the insight of what it's like to see the whole entire process of getting a product and testing things out and seeing the life cycle of everything.
For sure. For sure.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. So we're coming at about 40 minutes now. Typically, towards the end of the podcast, I like to ask people, you may or may not be a reader, I don't know, but what is one book that you recommend that's either, fiction, nonfiction, or just any reading material or learning resource that you would recommend to the audience, and why?
So I don't read, but literally this morning I went to my bookshelf for some reason. And this is ironically, if there was one book that I really liked and there was one book that I kept, it's right next to me, actually. I don't know. I got a lot of value from this one called The Founder's Dilemma.
Okay. I've heard of this. I never read it.
It was a reading that I had to read for some class, kind of like based on entrepreneurship, but I don't read any books. That was pretty much the only book that I actually read and enjoyed. So that's it. That's all I got.
What's it about?
It kind of just lays out like starting your own business and all the different issues that come across it, whether it be like if you have a co-founder, how you kind of negotiate the whole equity splits and all that stuff, and goes through a number of hypothetical scenarios that you might come across once you start like a legitimate company. And I found that to be valuable to kind of at least see the pitfalls that and some like common mistakes that people may go through. And for someone that was in school that kind of aspired to eventually get to the point of running a business myself, I thought that was just really valuable insight.
Very cool. What are your next steps in terms of, because I'm interested to hear your perspective, because I'm 33, you're 23, you're 10 years younger than me. What are your thoughts on like just real estate, moving out of the parents' house? Because like, my ethnicity is Eastern European. Like, we lived with our parents till we're 40, that kind of a thing. Like I know
same with being Asian. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with Asian culture. That's why I bring that up. I haven't lived with my parents since I was 18 because of college. But what are your thoughts on just like real estate and getting a head start as kind of like a young millennial? Like, how do you feel like we're at like a disadvantage? Because like I'm right in the middle. I'm 1987, right in the middle of millennial. You're probably a younger millennial. I feel like, with real estate prices and just like, I feel like with our parents, they didn't even need a college degree and they can make, 40, 50 grand in a factory or something like that. I feel like our opportunities, like a 4-year degree now is like a high school degree, and real estate's expensive. Like maybe this is a loaded question, but like, what are your next steps, I guess?
Yeah, I've been thinking about real estate a lot. Obviously, when I have the bump of winning the tournament, it gives me a lot more freedom and flexibility with whatever I wanted to do. And real estate's something I think about. Like I'm near the Boston area, and it's
expensive, man.
Crazy.
Boston's expensive.
And near any city, it's ridiculous now. And I just don't know. Like I think obviously it's just one of those. If you buy a property, it's just a really great investment. And as long as you have the stomach to hold on to it, if the housing market were to crash, just then good. I just need to have that stomach and be ready for it. But I have no idea. It's a really big investment, and I don't really know if I'm ready for it, but I just also have no experience. But I'm definitely looking into it. I'm super open to it. I just don't know technically, I don't know how to find the right deals. I don't know how to like maintain a home properly, have the right connections to get things done, finding the general contractor, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I think, historically, it's just feel like you should just put some money into real estate. And
if I was your age, I'm probably gonna patronize you here, but I don't care. If I was your age, I would house hack, dude. I'd buy like a 2 to 4 unit, get a FHA loan, super cheap money, low money down, and just fill it up, man. Fill it up with tenants or roommates or friends. Well, maybe not friends, because friends and money are like oil and water, but maybe just tenants or something. That's what I would do if I were your age, if I can go back right after college.
That's what I've heard. I've only run into a few people that did that at a young age, and they're doing very well. But like, I don't even know, like, how do you even find tenants like out of the blue?
Craigslist. No, I'm kidding. Well, actually, I'm not even kidding. I mean, there's
like Facebook seems okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have to learn how to screen, dude. That's the whole nother animal. Credit reports, credit history, stuff like that. People aren't necessarily, their credit score doesn't define who they are as a person, because they could have like medical bills that they couldn't pay and it destroys their credit, that kind of a thing. But if your screening process is tight, like vacuum tight, you'll eliminate 80% of the riffraff. But stuff always does happen. But if you have enough units, I mean, it's kind of like a portfolio. If you have all your money in Tesla and Tesla takes a crap, well, there goes your whole portfolio. But if you have a lot of different companies, aka a lot of different tenants or units, it smooths things out. And as long as you have reserves, cash reserves, you don't want to be going into these things like super over leverage with no money in the bank to not be able to withstand like a coronavirus or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. So
cool.
It seems like a great opportunity. I just need to get my stuff together.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Learn
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I was just curious with your age group, how you guys feel about real estate and stuff like that. And then also, it's a lot easier to take home a girl if you're not going back to your mom's house too. So
yeah, for sure, 100%.
Hey, you want to go back to my mom's house? No, dude.
Hey, I still have like my childhood posters. And you think you're good with that? I got my fat head here.
Yeah, you like my Michael Jordan poster? That's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
I got roasted in the comment section of my YouTube videos.
Yeah,
that's
I'm glad you brought that up. So how do you, okay, because I get this all the time. Like I'd say 9 out of 10 comments are like, oh, this is great advice, ton of value, love your channel, which is awesome. And then you always have 1 out of 10, that one guy that's like, you have a punchable face, your turtleneck is ugly. Like, how do you deal with some of that early on criticism? Because I read some of your comments in your channel when you were younger in your YouTube journey. These people are like, you're a donkey, you have no idea what you're doing. Like, how do you deal with some of that stuff?
Oh, they're still the same. They haven't gone anywhere. I think it's nice that I started with the expectation of having it, like I wanted it, because it gave me really good insight of learning. That kind of helped a lot from the jump. Nowadays, I see it and I kind of take some with a grain of salt. Like some are actually very helpful and in critical comments that kind of help me dissect like what are my exploits in terms of the game. And others are just like trolls, and it's like, all right, that comes with the territory, and you go on with it. Yeah. It's like you sign up for it. If you're going to make YouTube videos, you sign up 100%. To open yourself up for critical comments.
100%. All right, buddy. Well, we're coming up to an hour here. I want to thank you so much for your time. Where can people learn more about you?
If you want to follow me on YouTube, it's called Rampage Poker, and I'm making a personal channel a little bit more about the financial side and talking about what I'm into. That's my name, Ethan Yao.
Nice. And one last piece of advice. I kind of ended it prematurely. I apologize. What would you recommend to the audience in general? Could be any life advice, could be entrepreneurial advice, could be content creation advice. What is one thing you'd like to leave the listeners with?
If you have some sort of passion, I think go for it. If you think that will probably bring you the most happiness in life or whatever it may be, just start. I think starting is always the hardest part, but once you do, things get easier from there, and I don't know, you never know what can come out of it.
Yeah, I think it's being consistent, man. Consistency is really the name of the game, especially on YouTube or business in general, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah, that 100% is.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Ethan. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Marco.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Whiteboard Finance Show. To read more about today's episode, visit whiteboardfinance.com. And don't forget to subscribe to Whiteboard Finance on YouTube. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Investing of any kind involves risk. While it is possible to minimize your risk, your investments are solely your responsibility. This show is copyrighted by Zlatic Media LLC. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or broadcasting.